Hey, how's it going, everybody? We got a new episode of Rick and Morty, so I gotta talk about it. So this episode opens up, we finally get to see Rick fighting Mr. Nimbus. And there's a fight. It's not really clear why. It's something about, like, Morty wanted a fort made of clams on an island. And naturally, because Mr. Nimbus rules the ocean, he took that as an invasion or something. It never really explains it, and this is one of the reasons that I actually really enjoy Rick and Morty, is these moments where they just do not explain anything, like the Citadel of Rick's episode, where they went to Atlantis, which, in hindsight, I wonder if that's why Mr. Nimbus is his archenemy. It would make sense, but like that episode, we never really actually got to see what happened in Atlantis. And I kind of like when it just jumps you in the middle and lets you try to figure out what was going on. But the battle is short-lived and Rick just destroys the fortress himself. That way the fight will be over. It's kind of weird because like everything we've seen about Rick, he's like this unstoppable force, and it's just so bizarre over and over how Mr. Nimbus just is somehow an actual threat to him. And it's so ridiculous. But after Mr. Nimbus, Rick just keeps getting bombarded by a bunch of other, like, weird, super-powered villains who are trying to pick a fight with him. And that's really what the episode's about. We see the return of the therapist, Dr. Wong, and Rick actually goes to her for help. Like I said in a previous Rick and Morty video, I really think this season is showing Rick actually grow as a person in a lot of ways. And I think, I don't know, a lot of stuff about this episode just kind of feels like it was mocking my earlier Rick and Morty video. Like, we show Rick grow as a person and then actually, like, kind of wink at the camera about it. And in one of my more recent videos, I talked about how, like, the rift might have allowed beings more powerful than Rick to slip through, and that Rick might be in danger from that. And this whole episode of, like, just villains coming after Rick kind of feels like it's making fun of me for making that point. I still feel like it might pan out to be true, but this episode just takes it to an extreme. I don't think any of them were really a threat to Rick, other than clearly Mr. Nimbus. But yeah, getting back on the topic of the episode. So Rick is basically told by the therapist that he should just ignore him. He should just ignore him, and that will stop them from coming. And more than what he has been doing. Now, Rick tries to ignore him, and one of them insults Summer, so Jerry has to basically defend Summer's honor, and goes and beats him up, showing how weak some of these guys actually are. It makes you really question why on earth they would be picking a fight with Rick to begin with, unless they have some kind of death wish. Which may, as the episode pans out, turn out to be the case. Jerry beats up the villain, and is like basically turns into a superhero. They parody the Green Lantern pretty heavily. He gets like an orb of power. Rick helps him build like an Iron Man suit to be powered by it, and he goes around just like he basically does the same kind of stuff Rick does, but because he's stupid, he doesn't know if he's actually causing a lot of collateral damage or not, and somehow just lucks into like not doing anything bad. So this episode is a really rare win for Jerry. And after a couple episodes back with the whole fortune cookie situation, I felt like he kind of deserved it this season. Of course, because every TV show needs to revert to normality at the end, Jerry loses his power at the end, and everything goes back to normal. Honestly, this was probably one of my favorite episodes in a while. It just was quality Rick and Morty in a lot of ways. A lot of absurd humor. We actually get to see Rick develop as a character. Some really dark stuff that really just pushes the envelope. And, I mean, yeah, it was a good episode. One thing kind of bugs me, though. The Guardians, basically the Green Lantern Corps Guardian things, They know of Rick, but they clearly haven't given him a power cube because they don't deem him to be worthy of being a hero or whatever. But at the end, we see them debating over whether or not to give it to Mr. Nimbus. And I find that fascinating because we don't really see Mr. Nimbus do anything good. Mr. Nimbus is basically like a Greek god in mythology. He just kind of defends his realm and messes with anybody that dares mess with his realm. Like, he's attacking Rick and Morty at the beginning of this episode purely out of the fact that they are in the ocean. He doesn't care what they're doing, whether it's good or bad. He just doesn't let anybody touch the ocean. And that seems weird to me. Like, we've never seen Mr. Nimbus do anything that could be classified as good. And I feel like the whole controlling the police thing kind of might mean that he might be a little evil. So why would Mr. Nimbus be even a candidate? Well, maybe his power works over them too, since the Green Lantern Corps that they're parodying is basically like a intergalactic police force. Maybe the Guardians are affected by Mr. Nimbus's power. I'm really glad this season that they're bringing back older characters that they've introduced, even if they were just random wacky characters like Mr. Nimbus. I would like to see more of them. My rational brain, because I'm into like actual like sci-fi and fantasy and like not just crazy Rick and Morty stories, wants to like learn everything there is to know about Mr. Nimbus and why he's so powerful. But being a fan of Rick and Morty and how like Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland typically do things, I'm really aware that that's never going to happen. And if it did, it would probably ruin the character at this point. It's kind of like how they basically refused to tell Rick's backstory for the longest time, and then did it, but were like, yeah, but that might have all been lies just to manipulate somebody on Rick's behalf. So, yeah, we kind of know his backstory now, but we don't know the whole thing. And it's kind of like the Joker situation. Like, once you understand everything in the past, it kind of ruins the character a little bit. Kind of like how every time somebody does a prequel or series or movie, it kind of ruins the original a little bit because they always try to mess up some things that they've already told. But yeah, that's it for this video. I want to thank everybody for watching, liking, and subscribing. And really appreciate everybody coming to the channel to watch these Rick and Morty videos. It means a lot. It really reinvigorated my passion for YouTube. And I hope that that'll show through my future videos. Thank you.